Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's good to see all you. It's good to talk to you once more. I know it is a pre-recorded video, but my name, as always, is Rafael Ibarra, and we're gonna hop into some football talk, talking about some projections for the season, Super Bowl windows, windows that might have closed for some teams, windows that might be open for some teams. Oops. And I clicked the button. If you guys saw, some teams were on there in the Super Bowl door open category. But right now, going through all these teams, watching videos, listening to podcasts, we have injuries galore this season. However, there are a few teams that stand out above the rest. Teams like the Detroit Lions, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens. In my opinion, my Seattle Seahawks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Green Bay Packers, the Buffalo Bills, and the Houston Texans are amongst those teams that I believe this year have their Super Bowl window wide open for them and are in fact in the Super Bowl window. The reason why I want to go to my playoff rankings real quick, the teams that I believe will make the playoffs, the teams that we will see wild card weekend. So this is just updated. I believe I didn't have Washington nor Atlanta, and I had Seattle significantly lower in my projections for the early NFL season before the season had begun. I also did not have the Los Angeles Chargers in the mix, and I also did not have the Steelers in the mix as well. I believe I had the Jaguars in the mix and one other team in the AFC. However, because the NFL changes from a week-to-week basis, from a day-to-day basis, we also have to change as well. We have to change some of our predictions, and I will elaborate more on these teams as we go forward today. So the Detroit Lions, in my opinion, should be the number one contender to win the Super Bowl, or at least the betting favorite, in my opinion. Second to, and a close second would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the reason why I believe if this matchup were to occur, if the Chiefs, say, had Isaiah Pacheco back, or even Rashee Rice somehow became available for the Super Bowl, this Super Bowl matchup, the Kansas City Chiefs would win. However, I do not believe even though the Chiefs are rolling this season and have had one of the more difficult schedules starting off, the Chiefs will probably not be so lucky in terms of the playoffs. They have a phenomenal defense and a phenomenal offensive coach. Their defense is well coached as well, and their quarterback is one of the best. However, like I said, they do not have enough weapons. Xavier Worthy is supposed to be a little bit better. Now, if he can get better throughout the course of the year, we might see my opinion change on that. But like I said, if we do see the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs both in the NFL in the Super Bowl, we might. However, I was on the Kansas City Chiefs. If they can get some type of a bit more passing game, Mahomes brings his level of interception to touchdown ratio more as a balance, or at least just plays a little bit better football, the Kansas City Chiefs can three-peat. I also believe if the Detroit Lions and Kansas City Chiefs see each other in the Super Bowl, that the Lions will make some type of offensive mistake, some type of head coach mistake that the Chiefs, I do not see them making. And if they do, the Chiefs, meaning the Chiefs, it will be more so first half mistakes to get out jitters, not so much second half to lose the game. That's what really defines good football teams from great football teams, is the ability to make from the head coach to the quarterback to every single position on the field, all the way down on your team to make the best decision possible for your team. Which is why I believe that the 49ers will still make the playoffs. However, they'll have a bumpy road in there, like we've seen them have this year. The Baltimore, I was a little bit higher on Houston this year. I at least saw them to be a football team that could win against good teams. They are competing against good teams, but CJ is not looking like the type of quarterback we saw last year, because they have taken a little bit more off his plate. Now, if they put him in a position where he is the focal point of that offense and the run game is the counter, I believe that would be the most effective way for the Texans to make the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl. However, their head coach has made really interesting decisions with Joe Mixon in terms of running him like a Christian McCaffrey, and it really makes the offense too simple and not explosive enough to when they need CJ to pick up his pace. He still doesn't have that warmth in his arm or confidence yet in the game to play at a high level like he was last year. So I kind of see Houston as the new Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, but they need to be running it like Zach Taylor's offense to be a pass-first offense and have the run game as the counter productiveness of the offense as quarterback. I do think CJ is a really good quarterback, and he will continue to play his best football going forward to keep producing at a high level. However, I do think their offensive coordinator is going to keep them from lifting the Lombardi like we have seen in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have played a very difficult schedule, in my opinion. Let's pull it up. They have played Washington, the Commanders, who are a playoff team, in my opinion, and the leaders in the NFC East. They beat the Detroit Lions, who I believe in the NFC is the number 1 seed. They do lose to the Denver Broncos. I believe that game was kind of a fluky game. They come off 2 extraordinary wins, a little bit flat-footed. Detroit, Denver, I do believe has a significantly better defense. At least this year, the Buccaneers already dealing with problems are on the defensive side. The Eagles are a hit and miss. They can either be really good or really bad from a week-to-week perspective, but they are a really talented team. The Atlanta Falcons got them at the end, but they had pushed the ball throughout the course of that game in Atlanta. They do play them next week at home. They beat the Saints relatively easily. That game I'm going to dismiss just because, but it is a divisional game, back-to-back divisional games. But they do not have their starting quarterback. I do think Rattler should be, at least for the next half year and next year, the quarterback of the Saints, to just feel out if he is the guy or not, because I don't think Derek Carr is. And then the Baltimore Ravens, they deal with 2 injuries, I believe. Lots of people out there, lots of bettors out there had the Baltimore Ravens losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they had a significant, they were leading in the first quarter and they were coming back in the fourth quarter. However, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin did have significant injuries. One may be out for the rest of the year, one to their bye week. However, their bye week is week 11. If Mike Evans is back by week 12, at least, which is the Buccaneers Giants game, they can win that game. They can win the Panthers game. They can win the Raiders game. I believe the Chargers will be a loss. I do believe they can beat the Cowboys and the Panthers again and the Saints to finish off the year. I think the end of their schedule is really open for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to come off strong once more. The next few weeks, they do play Atlanta. That's the concerning part. If they lose once more to Atlanta, they would lose the division if Atlanta were to have as many wins as them. And then they play the Chiefs and 49ers. By then, maybe CMC will be back. But I had the Buccaneers as a 9+ win team, a 10 or 11 win team. I do believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers window is open, at least for this year. But Chris Godwin is hurt now. They should be a team that trades for a Cooper Kupp. Kupp had played with Baker in Los Angeles. I believe that would be a phenomenal pickup for them, especially for the end of the year. I do believe that the Buccaneers are a vastly underrated team this year. with a very easy schedule at the end of the year after their bye week. And their start of the schedule was pretty brutal as well. They played a couple good teams with all their players. If their defense can get healthy as their offense comes down, I do think the Buccaneers are going to be a team that the playoffs when it comes to the playoffs, teams do not want to face. We are going to go. So that was a long rant for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm gonna go to Green Bay. They also have a very easy schedule, I believe, moving forward, or I could be wrong. They've knocked off they lost the Eagles. They beat the Colts. They beat the Titans. They beat the Rams. They beat the Cardinals. They lose. They barely beat the Texans. They lose the Vikings. And they lose the Eagles. I think they're going to be not as good as Tampa Bay, which maybe is why in real time I'm moving Tampa Bay ahead of Green Bay. But I do believe that their head coach is a little bit better. They're looking healthier as the season goes on. They only have the Jags. They have the Jags next. They do play the Lions twice. They play the Bears twice. The Vikings one more time. Seattle. This could be a rough stretch, actually, for the Packers. I could see them losing. I'll give them the win in Lambeau against the Lions. I'll give them the win over the Bears. I will say they lose the last game to the Bears. They lose the game in Seattle to the Seahawks and the game in Detroit. I think they'll be a 10-6 team. My comp for them was like the Cowboys a couple years ago, or the last 3 years ago, or the last past couple years. I do believe Love is not as he's a bit more athletic than Dak. However, in terms of the way he plays and stuff is very difficult, in my opinion, to play around. Meaning that he makes a lot of dumb decisions. Instead of taking the sack where they can punt it, or at least taking an incomplete pass, throwing it to the turf, or throwing your check down, he needs to work on a lot of little things to go from a really good quarterback to a great quarterback. He needs to focus on his fundamentals. I do believe that they have found a good defensive coach, and Matt LaFleur is a really good offensive coach as well. However, the Vikings will be good next year. They will be like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of this year, I believe. And I believe who else? And I believe the Lions and the Bears are going to be significantly better once more. And next year, it's going to be a very difficult season for the and a very difficult couple of years for the Green Bay Packers if Jordan Love doesn't get things together. Last year could have been just a fluke year in terms of maybe injuries, teams not being as good in their division last year. So Kirk Cousins on the Vikings got injured. Justin Jefferson also. And I believe the Bears didn't have Caleb. Going to Washington, if Jaden can stay healthy, they can get to the playoffs. I don't see them beating Green Bay in the playoffs. I would take Jaden over Love though for their careers. I do believe Jaden has the fundamentals. He's comfortable in the pocket. He knows how to escape well, and he doesn't make dumb decisions. They also have a declining division. This division I thought was going to be a little bit more competitive. I thought the Washington Commanders would come in third and not first, but be looking from the outside in. So they're a team to look at in a couple of years to win the Super Bowl, maybe next year, or next year against the Vikings in the NFC Championship. One of those teams will make it maybe against Detroit again. I just think Detroit is a very good team on the upward trajectory. They just need to tighten up a little bit and play their spots as at head coach. And then Seattle, I think the shift from Pete Carroll to Mike McDonald was a very good shift. I'm being a little bit biased by saying they're going to come in second. However, they've played a decent schedule already. But like the Green Bay Packers, they play a gruesome schedule going forward. They beat the Broncos, which was difficult. However, the Broncos are a team that are very surprising this year. They beat the Patriots, which was very interesting why that game was so close. They killed the Dolphins, which was expected. No Tua. They played the Lions, hurt. Then they lost the Giants. Then they lost to the Niners. So 3 back-to-back losses. No, not so healthy, however, and they're still trying to find who they are. However, last game did show, I thought that the Falcons and the Seahawks were a bit closer, in my opinion, to what people had and what other people had thought, that they were more or less the same team. That changed when Byron Murphy and a couple others had come back on the defensive side. And if Geno keeps playing this well with Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf, I think that offense will roll. I do believe this next game is a very interesting one as well. Playing the Bills, if they can beat the Bills, and I think the Bills are more or less like their comp, haven't really played too good of teams. Let's pull that up. This season, they beat the Cardinals, which was kind of like the Broncos game for Seattle. They killed the Bills where Tua got injured. They beat the Jags, they are not that good this year. They lose to the Ravens, which was kind of like the Seahawks lost the Lions. Then they lose to the Texans, which is kind of like the Seahawks lost to the 49ers. And they almost lose the Jets. They do kill the Titans, which is another team that's not very good. This Bills team, the Green Bay Packers, and my Seattle Seahawks are kind of in the same range in terms of how good this team could be moving forward. If I were to do it again, if I were to move a couple spots, I would probably have the Buccaneers at the second. Buccaneers as the second place team in the NFC. I would have the Seahawks as the third, Washington as the fourth. That looks a bit better. I think that looks better. If I really have to dive in deep, I think that's the way I would go with everything. And then I would probably put, going to the AFC side, Chiefs at 1, maybe. They do have Andy Reid. They do have Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback head coach combination, offensive coordinator combination. And then Spags on the defensive side. It's very hard to bet the Chiefs lose if it's not against the Bengals. Which is why I have them as the betting favorite in the AFC. They have had a very difficult schedule. Let's see. Chiefs. So they beat the Ravens when both teams were healthy. The Ravens, for some reason, they don't play the Chiefs as well. Lamar just didn't look like how he looked like the last couple of games he's been playing. They beat the Bengals, but they could have lost to both those teams. The Falcons, they played close. The Chargers, they played close. The Saints, they killed, and the 49ers, they've killed. So they've gotten better in terms of their talent getting worse on the outside, at wide receiver and at running back. I do see them losing the next game to the Raiders. Raiders play them tough. I think their division will be difficult for them moving forward. They play Tampa, which could be a Super Bowl matchup that we could see this year. They play the Bills. Realistically, they could lose the last three games to the Broncos, Steelers, Texans. I think they could lose to the Bills as well. And maybe the Broncos the first time, maybe. So I could see him losing the next 3 of the 4 or losing the last 3 games. But Pacheco should come back at least the second game against the Raiders, if not against the Chargers. However, if they do see one of their divisional rivals in the playoffs, like the Chargers or the Bucks, the Chargers or the Broncos, I do believe that the Chiefs could lose that game. And they also could play the Bengals, and that would possibly lose them that playoff game as well. But not putting the Chiefs at the number 1 is very idiotic in my opinion. The Ravens really haven't played. They've played okay teams. They've had difficulty. They lost to the Chiefs. They lost to the Raiders. They barely beat the Cowboys, but they rolled them and they let them come back. They rolled the Bills. They played the Bengals tough, which is a divisional game. They played the Commanders tough. They played the Bucks. They rolled the Bucks, but the Bucks were coming back. I think they could lose to the Broncos. I think they could lose to the Bengals. I think they could lose to the Steelers. I think they could lose to the Chargers. And then I think they can lose to the Steelers again and the Texans. I had the Ravens as a 10-7 team coming in. They lose their defensive head coach or defensive coach in Mike McDonald to Seattle, which is why I had Seattle so high up this year. I'm going to switch the Texans and the Ravens right now. I'm going to put I really want to put I think they deserve it more, and they've played a more difficult schedule. I want to put the Broncos over the Bengals. And I'm hoping that happens because I do want to see the Bengals, Zach Taylor fired. I do want to see Mike McCarthy over there in Cincinnati or in Jacksonville. But the Broncos lose to the Seahawks, who I think are good this year. They lose to the Steelers, who I think they're good this year. They beat the Bucks, who I think they're good this year. They play the Jets tight. That's the game that's kind of making me think again. They roll the Raiders. They play the Chargers tight. Chargers win that one. And they roll the Saints. They should roll the Panthers. I think they should win against the Ravens. I think they'll play the Ravens and the Chiefs tight. They don't need to win those two. but they need to beat the Falcons, the Raiders again, the Broncos, the Colts, probably split with the Chargers, and play the Chiefs tight and beat the Bengals. That Bengals game, week 17, is the game that whoever wins that one will probably get the 7th seed, in my opinion. I'm going to say the Bengals should be there. The Chargers. See, I don't think the Bills should even be up there. I like Burrow. I had him going to the Super Bowl this year, but I didn't see their defense being this bad. No, I'm gonna keep Steelers at 5. I'm gonna play the Broncos. Copy. I'm gonna play the Broncos as the 7th seed if they beat the Bengals. And then I think I need to do the same over here with the Bears. And I think the Bears should be like I think San Francisco should be 5. I think I would probably have that like that. I do think I do think though that the Broncos are better than the Bears. They're better than I think they're better than Green Bay. I think they're better than Atlanta. Broncos are difficult. They're a difficult team. I didn't think the Chargers were going to make it this year. That's a difficult. The AFC will come down to the wire. I think the NFC will also, but you can kind of tell which teams will be in the playoffs in the NFC, not so much the AFC. It's going to be close. It's going to be close. I'm going to my NFC divisional round. I do think that these are the teams that have their Super Bowl window open. The Green Bay Packers, talked about them. Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, and the Houston Texans. All these teams, or I'm going to say the AFC has the superior quarterbacks. The NFC possibly has the superior head coaches and teams. So if their quarterbacks can just play well, like we've saw the Seahawks Broncos Super Bowl, where the Seahawks had the far better team, The Broncos had the better quarterback. That could possibly happen. It's a team game overall. Their Super Bowl door is open this year, possibly for the remainder of the next 4 to 5 years if these quarterbacks play that long. Because of their quarterback, because of their head coach, the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Rams should always be on the outside looking in, kind of waiting at that door. If somehow it pops open, they're usually the team that I see that goes and walks in. Atlanta Falcons, I think Kirk Cousins, if he's just built around this team is young, he just can't make dumb mistakes. And the coaches have to have a really good play a good plan for their team if they want to possibly win a Super Bowl from a week to week basis. Washington is on the come up. I think Jaden is phenomenal. I think they'll be here in next year, possibly if they don't even win it next year. But I do think that Washington has found their franchise quarterback. Cincinnati they need a new coach. I'm going to say something that is kind of polarizing, but I don't think they should sign Jamar Chase. I think they either franchise tag him or they sign him for 3 years and not 4 years. Or I just don't think that Jamar Chase is as good of a wide receiver as like a Justin Jefferson, where he needs to be. And I think that's the problem that the Dallas Cowboys had made this offseason is they signed their quarterback to a big deal. They signed their number one wide receiver to a big deal. I think you sign Aiden Hutchinson, you get more pieces on the defense, you trade T. Higgins for a couple picks or a pick and a player. You let Jermaine Burton and Andre Yoshivas play good and play. You find a good head coach that can use those players. And maybe if you change the head coach, you sign Jamar. But the T and Jamar won't be on the same team together. I do think T. Higgins had a very good offseason this year, which is why he played very well. Is playing very well this season. And Jamar held out. The Chargers, they now have a head coach where you can count on. We still haven't seen enough because of head coaching problems from Justin Herbert. But he can be a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion, because of the new head coach in Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh is a little bit better at coaching than John Harbaugh. And I do think in terms of Super Bowl contention, I do think that Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh can probably win a Super Bowl, possibly before Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. The Steelers will always be there. They're a good ran organization. Mike Tomlin knows how to run a defense. In a couple of years, I would move off of him. He just signed. I think they need to get better at schematic defenses, and they need to work on their offense a little bit more. Just have better players on that offense. At least the number 2 wide receiver, if they can go get T. Higgins, that would be nice for them. If they can go get like a Cooper Kupp. And then I think Russell is just fine as a quarterback unless they find something. Someone who they really like at quarterback to be a 4 or 5 win guy, a 4 or 5 year guy to contend for the Super Bowl. But I think the Steelers are always in it. Kind of like the Rams, but a defensive type. Teams that got kicked out of the Super Bowl club: the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, the New England Patriots, and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to address the first one that probably people are thinking, the New England Patriots. They've been kicked out. Yes, but they're now really in their rebuilding stage, in my opinion, now that Bill Belichick is not there. I thought with Bill, they've always had a shot to possibly contend, be like the Steelers, but he wasn't as good as a head coach without the quarterback as Mike Tomlin. I think if you're the Bengals, if you can't land Mike McCarthy, land Bill Belichick, or land Mike Vrabel and go defensively to stop Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And then the 49ers, they just couldn't capitalize on their opportunities. The Seahawks are getting better. The Rams are going to get better because they have, I believe, McVay is a far better coach than Kyle Shanahan. Like I said with Houston, with Bobby Slowick, I think the offense is just too simplified, which is why that has hurt the San Francisco 49ers. And the Eagles, their division was messed up. They have head coaching problems also in terms of just the attitude and the aura. I think if they get rid of Sirianni, that they could possibly be in the tier looking forward. But because of that head coach and because Jalen Hurts has been a quarterback that is really good or really bad, I think that they have a chance. But for right now, with their coaching staff and just the way that they're playing, they are for now out of, they are kicked out of the club, of the Super Bowl window. still trying to find the place. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the Miami Dolphins, the Denver Broncos, the Indianapolis Colts, the New York Jets, the Arizona Cardinals, the Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints, and the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets, and the Indianapolis Colts are the three teams that just got their invite. And the club owner or the Super Bowl owner is wondering, the playoff owner is wondering why these teams were invited in the first place. He's really rethinking it. They're calling every second of every day. Where's this place at? I can't find it. These guys live in the same exact city, on the same exact street, and cannot find the place. They cannot find the Super Bowl. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Arizona Cardinals are two teams that have gotten the invite for the last 5 years and still cannot find the place. And why I say that is because their quarterback is not reliable, and their franchises think that they're the best player in the NFL, and they can't do anything better than Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray. The Miami Dolphins and the Minnesota Vikings, they have the head coach. I believe that Mike McCarthy is the right quarterback, but we shall see next year. And I believe, and they do have a nice defensive head coach in Minnesota. The Broncos, but they have just been hit with injuries last year, now this year for the Vikings, last year, this year with the Dolphins. But I do think that they will make a push next year, the Dolphins. The Denver Broncos just got the invite like yesterday, and they're looking a little bit better. I think they can make a push. I think Sean Payton is a decently good play caller. I think Bo Nix is okay. Their defense looks really nice right now. They just need a couple of pieces on that O-line and those wide receivers, and they should be okay. And the teams that are still waiting for the invite, maybe they think their computer is slow, but they just are not getting anything for the time being. The Oakland Raiders, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, the Carolina Panthers, and the Tennessee Titans. I do believe that these three teams on the right are more in a rebuilding stage and are closer to getting an invite than the Raiders and the Panthers. However, I do think the Panthers need to move off, or at least play the guy, play Bryce, and if he's not him, then move off him. But I really liked Bryce going into the year. You guys know I really liked him going into last year as a quarterback but maybe he's just short and can't throw, and maybe the offense is too complex now in the NFL. But I think he could be like a Baker Mayfield. And if one of these other 4 teams cannot land one of the 2 quarterbacks, I think they should take Bryce, send the other team a 3rd and 5th for the next couple years and hope for the best. The Browns, I think, would be not a good fit because of the cold weather. I think Tennessee maybe, or Oakland. Or Las Vegas. But Cleveland made a move for Bailey Zappi. Let's see what that looks like. And the Saints are, I didn't touch on the Saints, but they're more like the New York Jets, the Colts, and they're just, the guy is just wondering why they got the invite. Why he sent it out in the first place. But that is my Super Bowl window. I changed it a little bit. Those are my playoff teams. I did have the Niners beating the Texans in the Super Bowl. I think the Texans still have a ways to improve, but I don't think they'll be hosting the Super Bowl if they see the Lions in the Super Bowl. If the Lions see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I don't think the Lions will be hosting the Super Bowl. We shall see what happens. But my takes are these teams that have, or the next episode will be the teams with decently average quarterbacks like a Baker Mayfield, a Geno Smith, a Jordan Love, a Brock Purdy, a Kirk Cousins, a Justin Fields, a Russell Wilson, a CJ Stroud. Those are the teams that just need to build around their quarterback, good offense, good defense, really strong defense, and hope that their quarterback does not make dumb mistakes if they want to win a Super Bowl. And teams like the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Chiefs. The Bengals and the Ravens, I'm going to say, not the Chiefs. The Bengals, the Ravens, probably the 49ers even. And the Cowboys. Teams that need to find a better coach on the offense or the defensive side, or both, because they have the quarterback. But I think that's everything for me. I hope you guys enjoy. I believe my 2 Super Bowl predictions, again, like I said, is Chiefs over Lions or Lions over Texans. All depends who's in the Super Bowl. But it's going to be a really fascinating next couple of months until February, next 4 months. The teams that I'll be betting on for next year, probably these same teams here that you see. These 14, 15, 16 teams. But I think that's everything for me. I will catch you guys in the next one. My voice is shot. Thank you for listening. Later, guys.